Here we are. I get to rub my hands with glee. I'm gonna do at least one more video. Eileen's still asleep. We're gonna do taxation laws here on We Play Games, and I hope some of you at home are just like smiling with the same sort of madness than I am, because I love discussing these taxation laws. So depending on where you are as a country, you're probably gonna start in land-based taxation or per capita taxation. I'm going to save discussing consumption based taxation for last because it's rare and it's insane. It's worth talking about though. But most of them are going to start in either land based or per capita. If you're a more developed country, you're going to start with per capita. If you're not, then you're probably going to start in land based. What are the implications of this? All right, so a land tax, this is a tax applied to your peasants. If you've seen the labor rights and serfdom video, then you should understand that a lot of the income from your peasants is going to come from their subsistence output. And so the land-based taxation is going to maximize the amount of money that you can get from your peasants. And so while your economy is largely peasants, having land-based taxation isn't that bad. But you'll see here we have a 7% income tax rate, whereas here in per capita it's a 15% income tax rate. The step up to a per capita taxation, once you've developed basically any sort of economic activity at all, just gets wider and wider and wider. So you can see this is just like a new save as Japan. If we switched into a per capita taxation on day one without adjusting anything, we would immediately be at basically zero, and that's without having built anything. Who else? There's gotta be somebody else who starts in land-based. Yeah, like Russia. Russia starts in land-based with a real economy. So if Russia could just immediately switch into per capita taxation because of the income rate tax difference, they would be making more money. Other than that, their numbers are basically the same. The switch out of land tax for income tax. The per capita tax rate is also pretty neat here because that's sort of like an adjustment for non-peasant pops, right? It creates a land tax for non-peasant pops, which is really helpful for, again, keeping your economy roaring as you move along. Then we of course have the proportional taxation, which you'll see here even at this development level, you gain a lot from Russia from switching from a per capita into a proportional. We still pick up like 4,000 extra pounds, and that's in a non-developed economy. As like UK, if you switch into proportional taxation, you make even more. And it's because you're not even doing per capita tax stuff anymore. You don't care about taxing a laborer for living in the UK if you're under proportional taxation because it's just not worth your time, right? Doing tax assessment on poor people is largely punitive rather than profitable. Whereas income rate, consumption tax, and dividends, the consumption rate tax rate, that unless you have a ton of authority, ultimately by the time you get to proportional taxation might not matter at all. But it's worth to keep in mind that you don't sacrifice it by going up. And so if you have a high authority government, then you can still make a lot of money by going up to proportional graduated. But proportional is going to have a much, much, much higher income tax rate, as well as a dividends tax rate. What is a dividends tax rate? So a dividend is the extra money that's coming out, like when you have max cash supply on these guys in your buildings. No, God, Walker, you have to click on one of these. Max cash reserves. And then you're going to, there you go, reserves while the rest is paid out to pops as dividends. So they own this shipyard. These capitalists own that shipyard. And so all the extra money that's coming out of the shipyard is going to go to the capitalists, going to make them really rich and powerful because it's not even income, right? They're not getting paid that for doing a job. They're getting paid that for living there and owning that stuff. But if you're in proportional taxation, then you start taxing the dividends. And that's going to be really strong for you for the same reason that taxing aristocrats in the beginning of the game with your consumption tax, just taxing capitalists with a dividend tax on proportional is going to be useful for you because you want to make a bunch of your IGs weak so that way you can push them around. Graduated taxation is also a little tricky. This is one where you see you gain even more from dividends and less from income. You really only want to be in graduated taxation in the event that you have some outrageously profitable industries, because it's going to actually tax most pops at a lower rate and only it's really only taxing buildings that have a positive cash reserve balance, like a maxed out cash reserve balance. So, think about it. I think largely graduated taxation, there are very few situations where it makes more sense to use than proportional until your productivity on your buildings gets enormous. Once your productivity on your buildings is enormous, then it might make sense. Basically, you can use the change in revenue from current tax law to help guide your hand there. Consumption-based taxation is entirely different and completely insane. I'm going to make this 6 minutes, but the bureaucracy population cost multiplier, don't overestimate that. Consumption tax cost is the main thing there. In order to get most max value out of a consumption-based taxation law book, you need a lot of authority, which means that you need to have an incredibly autocratic society. Those typically tend to be weak. So if you find a way to use consumption-based taxation and have it be strong, please let me know. It looks kind of like a joke to me. That's Walker.